A lot of people ask about what kind of scopes they might need on their AR-15 type rifle, and that's a question that really depends and is contingent upon your exact application. If you think about it in terms of tires on a car, if you ask somebody, what kind of tires do I need on my automobile? Well, that totally depends on if you're going to put it on a four-wheel drive for the wintertime driving, you're going to be doing off-roading, you're going to be doing drag racing, or what. So your tire choice is totally contingent on your exact application, just as your optics choice is totally contingent on your exact application of what you plan on doing with the rifle, right? So it's super important that you get those questions squared away first, because that's what you're going to base your entire answer on. And it's super important that you're not barking up the wrong tree, because what might be an incredible optic for a different application might really suck for what you're trying to do with it. You could put a $3,000 scope on a rifle that you're going to use for close quarters combat, and it might not be the right deal, see? So in this video, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of kind of what we got going on this table. This is all my personal stuff here that I do use, and I'll show you what we got going on. And I'm not scared of using budget optics. I'm not scared of using sporting grade optics of all different qualities if it meets the application. Everything really that has been made has some kind of application that is pretty good for it. From your low grade optics to your high grade optics. So I'm not scared to talk about expensive stuff, medium grade stuff, low grade stuff, if it's done for the proper application. And that's kind of the name of the game here, just to beat a dead horse a little bit more. So if you look over here, we have an example of, we have sporting optics like this Citron 3-12, which I got on my childhood AR-15 that I kind of learned to shoot on. This is a Colt H-bar with a 20-inch barrel. And this is like a deadly prairie dog destroying machine. I've decimated towns of prairie dogs with this thing. A lot of death has occurred out in the bush with this rifle right here. And this is a low-grade sporting optic. It's very affordable, and it's something that, what a lot of the tactical gurus wouldn't think would be the coolest optic for this rifle, but for the application that I was using it for, and that I continue to use this particular rifle for, it's really good. And this scope is going to be, synonymous with a lot of your over-the-counter sporting optics. Here you see more of a tactical style optic that's kind of a crossover. It's a tactical style sporting optic, a primary arms 1-6, configured with an ACSS reticle. So this is more of a long-range optic that is actually a good crossover for maybe some applications where you might be a designated marksman type situation. This is on AR-10. We got Trijicon ACOX, we got IOR Veldata fixed power tactical scopes. Another 1-6, we got some red dots here, aim points, Holosun. I got some JP holographic sights. I got some Vortex Spark. I got a Elcan M145 and just all kinds of weird stuff here. So we'll narrow it in for you guys here. Now, when you're talking about semi-automatic rifle scopes, you really got to define exactly what you're going to be using it for. So most people who buy AR-15 seem like they're kind of looking for an optic that's going to be handy for use on something that's going to be used for self-defense, right? A panic rifle. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, you're going to defend the house with it and potentially run out in the yard and take care of space aliens that are coming out of the UFOs in the cornfields, like on that movie Signs or whatever. If you're going to be using it on a panic rifle, you're going to need something that's like very little magnification and very easily visible. And I would recommend something in the category of an aim point, okay? My opinion is, if you're using this for a serious defense rifle, where you're going to be anticipating that someone's life is going to be on the line, you need to get something with proven reliability. And for a home defense rifle, my personal choice has long been this aim point here. And there's a lot of different grades of aim points. This one is a PRO, which is a patrol rifle optic, kind of designed for law enforcement applications, but it's a very reliable scope. And it comes in a nice package, easy to mount. You got your ratcheting deal. We did a 5-year-long review on this. If you guys want to check out the details on that particular scope, we have a very comprehensive review, battle-proof on this thing. And we've got a reputation worldwide for being real hardcore. So you can get into an aim point that's very, very good scope for a pretty low amount of money, you can go with these for like $350 and be in that serious class of defensive rifle optics. You don't necessarily need to spend thousands of dollars to get this done. So Aimpoint PRO is probably my top recommendation for a serious home defense type optic for a carbine, okay? And these are very well suited to rifles with 16-inch barrels or SBRs, things like this, something handy that you're going to be shooting close. And in all honesty, and we got another example here too of the Holosun. We just completed a preliminary teaser video on this. This Holosun right here on this AK is also a red dot optic that's quite a bit more affordable, and it actually has kind of a little bit more fancy of a reticle in it, so you can do your holdovers at up to like 300 yards. And so this is a good crossover scope as well. That has been actually proven to be pretty tough. I do see that they're using these in combat in East Europe, and they are being run on Kalashnikovs, which a Kalashnikov tends to eat optics, especially electronic scopes like this that are a little bit more fragile. The whiplash action of the AK, if you watch them in slow motion, they're dancing all over. They got a weird whiplash pattern, plus this heavy bolt carrier group slams forward. It produces an airgun style recoil with the whiplash action, and they are very, very rough on optics. And Rob from AK Operators Union actually been running some of these for quite a while on some of his test rifles. And so if you want to see these things in action, I mean, he's like really rough on them. Like throws them on the concrete and gives them a really good battle test to see where the limits are. So I'd suggest checking out his channel for more details on the Holosun, and we're going to be doing a lot more review in a different direction with the Holosun as well, doing some long-range precision shooting and stuff with them. So that's something that you can look at if you're more on a budget. $350 though, guys, is like pretty affordable, but if you can't afford that, this is a really good alternative. It's quite a bit more compact. This is going to be the same size as like a T1 or an H1 or whatever the Aimpoint equivalent is nowadays, right? It's a very compact optic. Your battery life is huge too. I would not recommend any of these Aimpoint style scopes. Now there's a lot of scopes that are Aimpoint style with a similar footprint. And just because a scope looks like it's similar to one of these deals doesn't mean nothing, okay? Because you can get into one of these tactical style optics for pretty cheap. And what you're going to find out is that it's really just the style. It's the internals that really matter, especially for a defensive rifle. So for those applications, you're very limited to a few battle-proven designs. And I do like, EOTech is a good choice too. I don't run EOTech myself because they require battery changes more often. And for a rifle that you're employing in home defense, you might forget to check your battery every couple weeks, right? And that happened to me on numerous occasions with other optics, so I gravitated towards the stuff with a super long battery life. I think battery life on this last time I checked, 3-4 years, okay? And you leave it on the whole time and it's got 3 or 4 years of battery life. So that's going to be pretty good option to go if you're going to use a red dot. And the nice thing is you can shoot inside the house, point blank range, very quick, super quick, no matter what your lighting is, and it works good. Another thing to consider too is that this is still effective out to 300 yards. So, and the other thing too is this is with a 2 minute of angle dot. That's the dot size I prefer in optics of this style. You got a fine dot, for a red dot, 2 minute angle is a pretty good choice that I like, because if you've got a good discerning eye and you employ your marksmanship, you can be super deadly out to like 300, okay? Which is plenty safe distance away from most bad guys, okay? So this is going to be 0 to 300, no problem. Beyond that, you can still hit. I've shot targets out to 500 with aim points. You just got to kind of visualize, and you've got to use your perception and your experience level and your intuition to make your holdover and wind hold-offs with an optic like this. With an optic like this on the Holosun, they do assist you more in those regards. They give you holdover points, and some of the Holosuns even have the wind dots on the side, so it eliminates some of that guesswork. There are other choices people might ask. I'll give you some popular examples. A Vortex I got maybe 8 years ago, Vortex Spark. I was running this on this Mahdi AK-47 for a long time, and what happens is that some of these are sporting grade optic, okay? And I would put this under that category. It seemed to break a lot, and this is actually the third or fourth one I think I got. The first 3 broke within a couple hundred rounds. And what happened was there was internal, I think it was the beam device that projects the beam got rattled loose on the first one. Second one had connectivity issues with the power source, and it was going out of whack. And every time you shoot, it turn on, it'd go dim, and turn off, and then it would change power settings and all this. So I had to go through 2 or 3 or 4 of them. I think this is number 4, and it's not like super reliable like an aim point is going to be. Not to slam it, this would probably work very good and very reliable on an AR-15 rifle with a different recoil impulse pattern that would knock the poop out of it so bad. But you want to be careful with some of these other optics that are very popular, that are advertised as tactical style, because they might not necessarily fulfill those criteria. I also just did a preliminary review on this J-Point sight. It's a little tiny holographic sight, and it's not working anymore. I broke this too. So we'll do a review on this, but there's a lot of stuff that looks cool, that has really good advertising, that looks like it's really going to work good. But my personal preference, when you're talking about if your butt is on the line, the only thing I can really recommend is the stuff that's truly battle proven. So if I was in a courtroom trying to defend my advice to you and defending your family in a horrible situation or whatever, I would point you in the direction of an aim point. That's just me. I personally kind of also feel comfortable with the Holosun so far, but I haven't got like 8 years of shooting on this yet. So I'm still out to kind of analyze how my opinion is going to evolve on the Holosun, but so far so good. But aim point, very battle proven, very good quality control. That's a good way to go. For another, there's a lot of rifles, for example, like this, we got a carbine, and you have a 16-inch barrel. This is my Colt M4, right? And you might be able to reach out a little farther. So if you're not going to necessarily be using it as a primary panic rifle, but you can use it for patrol, like in a military situation, or if you got to go check the perimeter of your property in an apocalypse type deal, and you maybe will need to stretch your legs a little bit farther on your range, something like this is going to be configured a little better. An actual scope with magnification. 3.5, 4 power is probably going to be a good choice for you. This is actually a TA31 Trigicon, and this is probably my top recommendation for serious duty optics in the category of like a patrol optic, where you're going to maybe need to stretch it out a little farther, shoot more than 300 meters, and actually engage the enemy out there. One of the things you got to consider is there's a lot of scopes that look like this, If you go into the budget catalogs, or if you look online, there's a lot of counterfeits of these things. So you want to make sure you actually get a Trigicon, okay? There's a lot of stuff that was made in Asia that's kind of configured to make it look like it's one of these things. It's like a fraction of the cost. Just make sure you know what you're buying, guys. Study it out, get familiar with the real thing, and then once you're familiar with the real thing, you won't get hosed on the deal, right? But this is a very good option. One option that's equally as rugged, probably, and is maybe half the coin, is IOR Veldata. Okay, they make this little guy called the M1. This is the M1, and this is a straight 4-power scope. This is more of a conventional scope design. This ACOG is a prismatic scope. It's actually a little prism that replaces a group of lenses in the middle here, and the reticle is actually laser etched into a film of silver inside of there, and then you have your tritium powering it and all this stuff, and your illumination is, there's no batteries in the Trigicon, but this one is more of a conventional scope design, but it's probably one of the toughest ones I've seen. Fixed power optics in general are usually a bit more rugged than a variable powered optic, and this little guy, I've ran it for years on various 308s like FALs, and usually have it on my AR-10. And this is probably my second recommendation if you don't have quite as much money. Most folks say you got to spend as much on the optic as you do on the weapon, and that's a good policy. So if you spend $1,200 on a nice Colt M4, you might as well spend $1,200 on the optic. That's a good calculus. But if you can't afford it, this is going to be super rugged. It's got a reticle in it. It's got illumination, so you got to use batteries, but you always have a reticle in there. And that's a good thing to consider too. This is going to extend your legs out quite a bit. The particular design here is this is a ballistic drop compensating turret. And so you can dial in how far you are, right? So out to 1,000, and you just put it on the number of how far it is. And it's kind of the Eastern Bloc style construction, but they're very, very rugged, battle-proven little scopes. And for $500, $600, pretty hard to beat in terms of ruggedness. So this is one that I use on some of my patrol style rifles, okay? like my little 16-inch AR-10. If you don't have that much money, if you want to go cheaper than $500 and still have something that's pretty effective, you can get away with, there's only a few recommendations I have. This is the primary arms 1-6. And so if you're looking for a scope of tactical style that also almost compares in terms of ruggedness, you can look at the 1-6 primary arms. And I've run those on a couple different rifles now. This is my 300 Blackout, and it's very effective. The BDC compensation reticle on the ACSS design is actually pretty effective. So that's something you can check out too. That's going to be under $100 or $300. So that's the base price I can say for any kind of serious duty carbine optic that you're going to use for patrol applications where you might be needing to shoot beyond your minimum distances. You know, if you're pushing it past 300, you're going to start to need a little bit more magnification for most of these cartridges. And so it's something that you want to be aware of, is that for those serious applications, you really have to narrow it down. Your number one criteria, in my opinion, is going to be ruggedness. It's not going to be how heavy the scope is. It's not going to be how nice it looks. It's not going to be how cool the brand name is. It's going to be how rugged is the thing in real life. And you're going to want to find scopes that have kind of proven themselves in terms of ruggedness and reliability. So that's going to gravitate you generally more towards that area where stuff's more expensive. And even like this Elcan M145, I run this bad boy on these FALs here. So FALs totally eat scopes. They're like really, really mean to them. And these things, I've had FALs that ate them up with, 6 premium scopes. From Leopold's and like all this really nice stuff to all the cheap stuff. And they're just hard on them. It has to do with the bolt carrier and how it slams forward and the recoil spring and just the recoil impulse style of the rifle. So I like to run stupidly overbuilt scopes like these Elcan M145s. Big, ugly, heavy suckers that everyone hates, but they're really rugged. So for certain kinds of rifles like this, you might require specialized optics. Trijicon ACOG almost fits into the category. These are really incredibly stout, and these IORs I really like for those characteristics. And likewise, that Rob from AK Operators Union has been running these little 1-6s for quite a while on his AKs. He puts, he does 5,000 round tests to see how well they do on his AKs. And so if you're shooting 5,000 rounds through an AK and throwing the thing on the ground and doing push-ups on it all day or whatever like Rob does down there, these are actually pretty toughly configured little optics as well for cheap. So all the way from $1,500 down to $300, that's kind of the options that I would personally recommend. There are lots of other scopes on the market. They're going to be tactical style, and those are going to be very similarly configured. So the configuration and the features might be desirable, and that's good. And if your application is to do sport shooting or competitive shooting where you're doing 3-gun, now you have a whole new world opened up to you. Because in those applications, you're not going to be killed if maybe something in the quality control department wasn't exactly good, and after 700 rounds something rattles loose and you're way off, or a lens comes loose or something like that. It's not going to kill you. So then you can get away on these little carbines like these with a different style optic, a sporting grade optic, and there's a lot of options there. Basically, anything you think that is configured correctly that works for application is up for grabs. And there's a lot of brand names that do extremely good job with that. And I'm going to do a review on this too. And actually, this is something that this is a right-on scope. I don't know if you guys ever heard about these guys. They're kind of a new outfit. And Tracer83, I don't know if you guys ever heard of Tracer83's channel. He's a pretty high-speed dude. He's very good with the pistol. He also does long-range stuff. He's very well familiar with long-range. He is running these, and he says they're very effective little optics. And so this is a little 1-4 power. And it's actually built pretty nice, configured nicely. And stuff like this is totally on the table for any of those applications. You got your ballistic drop reticle in here. And, there's a lot of different sporting optics. Vortex makes a lot of very desirably characterized optics. Their Strike Eagles, and anything that they make is going to be great for sporting applications, great for hunting, great for competition, all that kind of stuff they're going to do really good at. And they have really nice glass quality on most of that stuff too. So the world is your playground when it comes to that kind of optic. And these actually are veteran-owned business. So if you want to support the vets, good way to go there. And we're going to do a more detailed review on this. This actually looks like a pretty promising little scope. It's stout. It's hefty. It's heavy. I like it. So promising review coming soon, I hope, on that. I would love to see how well that does. And we also have here, as an example, we did talk a little bit about the 1-6s. This is the new model, 1-6, real quick. This is the primary arms, 1-6. This is their Generation 3 scope. Okay. Now you guys might have seen the review I did on the 1-6s like you see here. But this one, if you compare it, you can see the footprint on it. It's a little bit more compact. It's a little shorter here and up here. And they actually did some rework on these, I believe, with the geometry of the lenses so that it's a little nicer on your lowest power settings, like 1 power. So when you crank her down to 1 power on a lot of these, there's a little bit of walleye distortion going on just because of how they have to configure the lenses. But this 3rd generation looks like it's a little bit nicer. When you're talking about hunting scopes on ARs and stuff like that, you got a lot of options. We talked about that before. Now if you're varmint hunting, your higher magnification scopes, with this one even has a duplex reticle on it, guys. You know, and if it's a little varmint, it's not like a huge deal. If you don't need to have all your leads and stuff figured out. You have all the time in the world to make sure you get a good hold on it. You can dial it in, whatever, or apply your Kentucky windage. So that's basically a real quick overview on some different options when you're talking about rifle optics. Another thing you guys might want to consider is for more serious applications on these battle rifles, because most people who buy rifles like these are kind of generally thinking like, what if one day I needed it in a serious application? That's why people buy stuff like this in reality. They're neat to play with. Some people do just collect. Some people just do competition. But in the back of everyone's head, really the truth is that you might have to use it. I would suggest to spend as much as you can on the optic, because what you're going to find out the hard way if you don't is you're going to find out the way I did, spending lots of money over the years buying cheap stuff that doesn't work, or it breaks, or you gain to a certain level of understanding and experience where you say, man, that thing kind of actually it's not as nice as this other deal. It's going to make my job a lot easier if I would have invested a little more. So it's never a bad idea to go with a decent quality item if you plan on getting used to it, especially on a weapon. If you plan on using it as a weapon, very important to make sure you got the good equipment. And when we're talking about battlefield applications and home defense, one thing you got to consider too is that these illuminated optics like the Trigicon and your aim points are going to be very desirable. Now, if you're talking about using this in the nighttime, that's something a lot of people forget about. Is a lot of the fighting you're going to go into against some potential adversary is going to be in the night. Just on raw, if you just threw a dart at the clock chart, it's going to half the time land in the darker part of the day, right? In the nighttime. And so you're going to need some kind of setup that you're going to be effective in the dark. A lot of guys run flashlights on their ARs, and that can be effective for home defense applications, but on a patrol application, or if you're engaging in combat overseas, protecting the country, protecting the Constitution, whatever you guys need to do, you might want to consider a night vision compatible options. And that's the nice thing about some of these aim point designs, or even I think the Holosun has night vision mode on it as well. But you can use night vision in tandem with these. And we're talking the I-squared technology. This here is an Armasight monocular, right? And a lot of guys, you know, the military guys, a lot of times will use monoculars of this style that you put on your head, and then you can navigate the terrain with the monocular, and you can have full peripheral vision through this monocular, turn your head any direction you want, and if you need to use the optic of the rifle to make a shot, a night vision compatible red dot you can still kind of use for shooting with night vision on. That being said, another way to go is a dedicated night scope like this. This is also by Armasight here, and this is something that's actually quite effective if you plan on deploying from more of a static position. I think that the monocular on the head is the best all-round choice. if you're moving around especially, because you're going to need to navigate with this thing. But if you're in a static defensive position and you're going to be deployed in an overwatch situation, a dedicated night vision optic like this actually might be a good way to go. These require experience to run. You got to really have a lot of experience, and even like soldiers who use these full time, it's kind of weird. You know, you put this thing on your head and it's goofy and it's weird, and it takes a lot of experience to really effectively and efficiently run these things, especially when you're employing a weapon with it, right? So there's a few tricks. For a sportsman who's night hunting hogs and stuff, a night vision optic like this, dedicated night vision with infrared illumination you can put on this rail here. This is just an Armasight World War Z scope WWZ optic. They're like under $500 and actually pretty effective. You're going to be able to ding the heck out of steel in the dark, or whack coyotes or hogs or whatever you need to do. So you don't need to spend a huge amount of money to get into the market. Of course, when you're talking about technology like night vision, if you want to get into your battle grade night vision, you have to spend a lot of money, like as much as a snowmobile, okay, or a new motorcycle, if you really want the good stuff. All that being said, another way to go with the night vision is, I kind of do like using these binoculars that you put on your head, and then you would use an infrared laser designator, and I don't got one laying on the table here, but it's a laser you put on your optic. It's invisible to the naked eye, but when you need to engage a target, you turn that sucker on, it shines out at your target. You don't even need to bring it up here, you just point at the target and then you can lay down rounds, and it'll designate for the rest of the guys exactly where you're shooting, so you can just point out your target. And that's how most of the guys who do this professionally, you know, over in the sandbox, like to use it. Most of the guys do prefer to employ that method. Now, a dedicated, classical, like I said, an overwatch position, static position, these do have their role. So again, it's all an application. You can't say, is a monocular like this better than a scope like this? It totally depends on your application of fire. And so that's something to consider as well. But yeah, guys, that's a quick overview of just a general, way to kind of select what kind of objects you're using. So if you're a sportsman, I'd recommend using a hunting scope. If you're using an AR-15, if you're using a SCAR or an FAL or an AK, you're not going to mechanically get away with it. But an AR-15 is pretty easy on scopes. You can get away with a lot of it. Most of your sporting optics are going to work great on those.
But she gets me, disassembles my leg. So I went to the doctor and he gave me a leg. Now she waits, slumber, just a dreaming, pity that hope that she kills instead of leaving the name. Though she's a minefield, she pops your body from the soul. Minefield, leave a big smoking hole. Minefield, please don't beat off my leg. Minefield, what's that little round thing on